At this part, we're going to introduce WLAN networking. And for WLAN network, firstly, let's introduce some concepts. For example, station. Station represents the PCs, the PDAs, or the mobile phones we use with wireless network interface cards installed. And the transmission medium is air, because as we know, nowadays if we install a wireless network and we can use, for example, stations, PCs or mobile phones to access the network, and between your station and for example, the AP, right, between the wireless device, the medium is air, right? So next, wireless access point, we call it AP, is device that set out the Wi-Fi signals, right, so that we can access a wireless network. And the next is a distributed system. Communication system used to connect APs and other network devices is called distributed system. Okay, after knowing these concepts, then let's see the networking mode of WLAN. The first is called the ADHOC mode. If we use ADHOC mode, multiple computers are interconnected using wireless NICs, and no wireless APs are deployed. So you can think that the ADHOC mode is just like that. We use, for example, in the wired network, we have two PCs, right? And we use one cable to directly connect them without any network devices. For example, normally there should be a switch, or there should be even a hub, right? Just like this. But in the ADHOC mode, it's the same. All the terminals or the computers, they connect with each other by using their own NICs without, for example, without any APs or other devices. Okay, and next mode is called the infrastructure mode. STAs are interconnected using APs. APs are regarded as hubs in conventional LANs. So the difference between them is that the first mode do not have any network devices, but the second mode, the infrastructure mode, should use some, for example, some APs, right? After knowing this, then let's see if we use the ADHOC networking, how does it works? The ADHOC mode is a spatial WLAN networking mode, right? Multiple computers are interconnected using wireless NICs. You can see here, each of them are using their own network NICs to set out signals and connect with each other. It is also called a decentralized networking mode because there is not a centralized device, right? So it's decentralized. Similar to hosts interconnected in P2P mode on a wired network, RF signals achieve point-to-point connection between STAs. As shown in the following figure, multiple laptops are interconnected through wireless connection. Even we use the ADHOC networking, in the properties of the PCs, you can see they are using the SSID, which is staff, and you can find the standards they are using is 802.11n, right? And the network band, the channels they are using, and the following parameters can be found here. So they can work properly with each other. Okay, and the next, for the infrastructure networking mode, a wireless AP or a router serves as the central device. For example, this AP is a central device of this WLAN. Wireless STAs are connected with APs, ensuring a star-type topology. An AP is like a hub. Okay, and in a network like this, the clients access the network, communicate with each other through the AP, and AP serves as a relay, or sometimes if we have multiple APs, we can use them to extend the scope or the coverage of the WLAN. And AP will help to, for example, to forward the data from STAs to the internet, or forward data from the internet to each STA. Okay, after knowing the working mode of WLAN, then let's see some concepts in a WLAN. The first is called SSID, Service Set Identifier. So from the name, we can know that it's since it's ID, so it's used to identify a network. So let's say how does it work or what's the function of it. All devices in the same basic service set use the same SSID to communicate with each other. For example, now in the first network, the SSID is office, right? SSID is office, and all the STAs will scan the network and find out a network or find out a WLAN which name is office. So actually, the SSID you can think is just the name of the Wi-Fi. I think in the daily life, when you, for example, when you use your mobile to search Wi-Fi, you could have multiple choices, right, in the mobile, and each Wi-Fi would have a name. Actually, the name is SSID. APs broadcast the SSIDs, and the scanning function of a client can be used to view the SSID of the current area. And no matter if you use infrastructure mode, of course we have an AP, right? Or if you use ADHOC mode, they would have a SSID, and it's the name of the signal or of the Wi-Fi. Okay, and the next concept is called BSSID. A BSS contains STAs that communicate with each other, and a BSSID identifies a BSS. So it's another ID to identify the BSS. It's represented using the MAC address of the AP. So pay attention here. It's quite important. The BSSID is a MAC address of the AP. And since it's a MAC address, so it cannot be modified. And actually, the BSSID have a one-to-one mapping relationship with the SSID. Okay, and in an ESS, here comes another concept, which is what we're going to introduce next page. In an extended service set, in an ESS, APs have the same SSID but different BSSIDs. Because in an ESS, they are in the same wireless network, so the SSID is the same. But maybe in an ESS, we could have multiple APs, so the BSSID could be different because different APs have different MAC address. But in some special case, if an AP supports multiple SSIDs, so different SSIDs are assigned for APs to map this SSID. So even we have multiple SSIDs on one specific AP, they will also establish a one-to-one mapping between the SSID and the BSSID. Okay, and if an STA moves out of the coverage of a BS, you can see here, this STA or this PC is moving from the coverage of, for example, BSS1 into BSS2. And what will happen? Actually, the STA can no longer communicate with other STAs in the BSS anymore, and roaming is not supported here. Okay, but if in some cases roaming is necessary, for example, in an enterprise network, I'm using my mobile to connect or using my laptop to connect with a specific AP, and when, for example, when I move inside the coverage, but I have associated with maybe another AP. If it do not support roaming, I will not access the new AP, or I will not associate with the new AP, and I will maybe lose the network signals, right? So to support it, let's see another concept which is called ESSID. Multiple BSS from an ESS. STAs in an ESS can communicate with each other. So ESS is another concept which is in an ESS it contains multiple BSS. Okay, and an ESSID identifies an ESS which can be manually modified. BSS with the CM SSID can be connected to form a large virtual BSS. If an STA moves out of the coverage of an ESS, for example, it moves out of the network, the STA can still communicate with other STAs in the BSS. Roaming is supported. And ESSID identifies the same network as the SSID does. So you can see here, if we have two BSS, BSS1, BSS2, and they are in the same ESS. So if for example, if the PC moves from the BSS1 to BSS2, it can still communicate with other STAs. Of course, they are in the same ESS. Okay. So about these concepts, it's a little difficult to understand. So here I make another example. For example, now I want to buy a new phone, buy a new mobile, right? And what do I want to buy? For example, I want to buy maybe Apple iPhones, right? So the iPhone here, you can think is ESS. This is a brand, right? Apple is a brand, so it's a ESS. While all around the world, Apple has a lot of app stores, right? So in the Apple stores, each app store would have a name. For example, in China, in Shanghai, there is an Apple store. And of course, this store would have a name. Normally, it's called Apple, right? It's called Apple. But what's for example, ESSID or BSSID or SSID, which is the same as Apple here, the name of the Apple store. You can think about it. The brand is, you can think is ESSID, and the name of the specific store, actually you can think is SSID, right? And last, each Apple store, of course, they would have a location, right? For example, the location of this, location of this Apple store is, for example, Shanghai, and in a specific road, and the number, for example, number 30. So what's this? This is a location of this store. So actually, you can think this is a BSSID. Of course, BSSID represents a MAC address of the AP, right? Okay, this is about the three concepts, and I think by this example can help you understand the relationship. After introducing these concepts, then let's see a question. By using this question, we can make a summary. Okay, which of the following parameters cannot be manually configured or cannot be modified? A. SSID, B. BSSID, C. ESSID, D. CSSID. So which of them cannot be manually configured? I think it's quite easy for you, right? Here we choose B, because BSSID is MAC of AP. So we cannot manually configure it. Okay, that's all for this part.